Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Cybeers. Very excited about this one as we've got our second ever guest. We had the fantastic Ricky Burke a few weeks ago, actually during November it was, but this round of Cybeers obviously joined by Jack Rutherford, CTO.
Hello, hello.
But really importantly, Lukasz Gogolkiewicz.
Pronunciation
Spot on.
Nice one, mate.
Nailed it.
The head of corporate security for Seek. Mate,
right.
I've been talking this one up to people for a little while. Welcome to Cybeers as our second ever guest.
Oh, mate, I'm super excited to be here. And obviously with the wonderful Jack as well.
I wouldn't say wonderful, but anyway.
Well, we're on camera, right? So I have to be nice. So
Opinions differ.
So what we're talking about today, guys, is the journey of a cybersecurity OG. I'd say to people, I realised the other day, I said to someone, I've been doing this for 19 years. This is my 20th year, and I kind of, whoops. Jack, how long have you been in the game for?
Time flies. Oh, I'm probably sitting at about 10-ish.
10-ish.
At about that mark, yep.
And you, Lucas?
good question. About like cyber,
Yeah.
like properly
Cyber,
in cyber,
cyber.
professionally,
Yeah.
probably about 15, maybe 16.
Right.
IT, I mean, my first job at IT
We don't
was like
talk
when I
about
was
IT because then
16.
we feel old.
Yeah,
But about 15, 16 years, right?
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And look, we all get around the industry doing a lot. You're obviously involved heavily with the Australian Women in Cyber Network, the Australian Women Security
Australian Women in Security Network. Yeah.
Network. Very heavily involved with B-Sides, heavily involved with TuskCon. Is there anything you don't do?
Yeah, well, not anymore. I don't do Crest anymore, but I'm still like a massive supporter of it.
Yep.
So you and I were on the advisory board for Crest a little while back. So.
Yeah, certainly were.
Well, that's
great
one of the
fun.
first things I wanted to talk about, how we
We've got to get into
all
our
know
beers
each other.
first
But
before we
do
do
have
that.
to start with the beers.
Right. Jack, what have you got there? I see a Stomping Ground Hop Stomper IPA.
Yep, so I've gone local, apparently. Not something I've tried before, being from Canberra, but I have the Stomping Ground IPA. Yep, looking forward to trying it.
Yep. Look, and I'm a big fan of supporting local, as a lot of people would know. I'm an Abbotsford local. The office is in Melbourne. So I've also gone the Stomping Ground Czech Pilsner. I wasn't aware they did a Czech Pilsner. Very keen to try this. If you haven't been to Stomping Ground, it's a beer hall and a brewery just down in Collingwood. So
Very
that's why I
nice.
thought I'd take Jack past.
Lovely.
And Lucas, you've got
super
something.
local. I've got super
You've
local
got something.
for you, mate.
haven't told me what it is, but you've got something. What
I
have
know,
you done?
I know that like this is like all about beers and like very fancy beers, Stomping Ground, Czech Pilsner and stuff. But on the topic of OG,
What?
got you the delicious Voy
the Vovo.
in a paper bag. And I picked it up from the bottle shop before. I'm like, can you make sure it's in a paper bag? And the guy looks at me really funny, and he's like, I'm like, mate, it's for a bit. Like I'm not.
Are you trying to tell me something? I'm going to take that from you. I'm going to enjoy this. Are you trying to tell me something without telling me something? I know I'm from country WA, but
Well, you're in Victoria, mate. You gotta. I have a funny story. We're in
well, first, mate, before we move on, what have you got? You have.
Oh
something.
yeah.
You have something very special that when we said we'll get you a beer, and you said, I'm off the beers, I'm on the wagon.
Yeah.
And then you said, but if you can get one of these, I'll be a happy man. What have you got?
So I got a Club Mate. So for the
Not
other
Club Mate, Club Mate.
Club Mate. So the other OGs out there, you know what I'm talking about. But for your sake, what it is, it's like a bit of an energy drink. It's kind of like Red Bull, Mother V sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember coming across this, geez, it would have been in 2000 and, I'm doing numbers now, 2000 and, I want to say 13, 2012.
Okay.
That's when I was working for Context Information Security back in the UK.
Yep. Fantastic pen testing team. there
Mate,
too.
I have some stories about that as
Well,
well.
that's why we're recording this, right?
But went to CCC, the Chaos Computer Club.
yeah.
They have like a bi-yearly, like every second year
Yeah.
congress or conference. And this thing was in Hamburg. It was in this 3-story building. Like they hired out the entire building. And they had like a crypto club, like a crypto village. They had a drone village. And this was like genuinely the
What?
first time I ever saw a drone. I'm just like, what is
Mind
this thing?
blown.
It's just crazy. And they're like, oh, this is how you make it. It's all about like makers, hackers, breakers, builders, all that kind of stuff. And the bandwidth they had was like in the terabyte or terabits. I was like, wow, this is just next
is
level.
wild.
And I was over there with some of my colleagues from Context, and they're like, yeah, of course, we go to CCC, don't you? I'm like, this is just, yeah. So anyone out there, if you have an opportunity to go to CCC, definitely go and definitely try that. It's an acquired taste, but it's really good.
And you asked for one. We end up with 36 of them. So if you want to come past the office,
They're stocked in the office now.
we've stocked them up. They are there. So, well,
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming on.
is it a bottle opener?
Yeah. Oh, yes, it is.
We might have one around
Haven't
somewhere.
thought about
I'm
this.
sure we'll be able to find one.
That's
so,
fine. If not, I'll take it back with me and just
yeah.
treasure it.
Absolutely.
You should. We've got 36 of them.
That's right.
Cheers. Thanks for my pirate juice, mate. Very much appreciated.
So on the VB, we're at Little Creatures Dining Hall.
I have not had one of those in about 15 years, and I
Fresh?
thought we were friends.
Just like you remember it?
Yep. Anywho.
Yeah, we're at, just a quick story, we're at Little Creatures Dining Hall, and I was there, it was back when I was working at NAB, my first time in Melbourne, a little while ago still, like 2009, 2010, and one of my mates, beautiful human, Julian, we're in the dining hall having like a team lunch thing, and a waiter comes around and he's like, hey, what do you want? He's like, I just have a VB, thanks. And he turns around and goes, mate, do you know where you are?
Oh, I haven't touched one of these since a night out in Perth. So that says how long ago for those who know me. I've been in Melbourne now for about 12 years. And even when I got here, I got on the Melbourne bitters. I didn't get on the VBs, I got on the MBs. And then, just progressed the beer journey and discovered how fantastic beer brewing places like Stomping Ground are in Melbourne.
I've never had a Melbourne bitter.
Never
I've
had
had
an
a
MB?
VB once or twice. That's about, before Rex, I'm a Queenslander, but
I forget you're a Queenslander.
well, I forget you're from WA. So
Yeah, I'm
we'll
from
just call
WA.
it truth.
He's from ACT, so we're all from different places.
Yep, no, the VB is still flowing the ACT, the very best. Yep.
That brings us to an interesting topic, right? I'm from WA, Jack's from ACT, you're from Queensland. How do we all know each other? I was trying to remember how we actually met each other.
I think it was through, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it might have been through the Crest Advisory Board initially.
Pretty sure it was, yeah.
There's probably like a conference here sort of thing in there. We would have maybe had a quick chat about sort of random things or said hello. But how we properly had a conversation, and because you and I were like super into the Crest thing.
Vocal?
Right? Vocal, yeah, exactly. Like the
to see things
direction
happen,
and
right?
change and what it should be doing. So I'm a massive supporter of it, and I think it's going in a really good direction.
Absolutely.
But how do you just boost that up, right?
Yeah, how do you bring others on the journey of getting things done? And then, Jack, how did you meet Lucas?
I think it must have been conferences and just through mutual connections, because the industry is so small within Australia that we certainly knew a lot of people just along the way, and then must have met each other through that. I certainly remember having heard your name many more times before I had actually put a face to it. And then one day we just happened to meet. I mean, obviously I met Nick many years ago now, 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, and he already knew yourself. I now sit on the Crest Advisory Board there, so
Neither
I
of
can
us do, but he does. So
confirm and
we
attest
passed
that
the
it,
mantle.
you've sent it in the right direction. You've guided it well. Thank you very much for that. I think it's doing well now.
That's fantastic.
But we must have met at conferences along the way. I'm thinking that's probably the main.
Yeah, and
venue.
like you tend to build these little groups of friends up at conferences. It's almost like when you go to a conference, you see your old friends, you meet a few new ones, right? And then you just kind of just hang out with your old mates and go to. I mean, people go to different conferences for different reasons. You know, they'll go for the social, or they'll go for the genuinely learning. Sit down, I want to see a presentation because there's something that's relevant to me at that time, or maybe, you know, from a consultancy world, there's something relevant from a gig that might be coming up. So you kind of just really want to embed yourself in that. Some people just genuinely go there saying, all I want to do is the CTF. I just want to hack stuff. I really love this thing and just really get into it. Do you ever do many CTFs?
I certainly did back in the day, back when I was coming up through the penetration testing offensive side of things, but it's been a while now. I don't know how it'd go now.
I think I said to you this morning that you now know more about incident response and managed detection and response than you do about pen testing.
Yeah, made the flip, made the change, red to blue.
You did the
Very
same.
different game.
Right?
CTFs?
Well, no, you've gone from red, right? You alluded to it before, that you were the head of pen testing for Context back in the day. as you were growing that team. Were you always in pen testing?
No, I kind of kicked off my career as like a sysadmin. Actually, I never wanted to be in IT.
Really?
Yeah.
Even
What did
IT,
you wanna
let
do?
alone cyber.
I was actually joining the Air Force. I wanted to
Really?
be a electrical engineer.
Wow.
It was really weird because I was always hacking stuff. Like ever since, was it 93, 94, the movie Hackers came out, and I'm probably going to get like...
If you're in cyber and you haven't seen it, then you're not in cyber.
I just remember that opening scene of like the SWAT team kind of running in sort of stuff. And it's like, oh, it gets your blood kind of going and pumping sort of stuff. And I remember, I'm like, oh, this is a really cool thing. I'm like, what's hacking? And just like, and what I say to people these days, back then, it was an art and a skill to find information. These days, it's an art and a skill to find the information that's completely irrelevant, or actually is only relevant, and discard the stuff that's not really relevant. So back then I was just like, I want to do this hacking thing, and I was on some IRC, I can remember MIRC back in the day, right?
Yeah.
I was on ICQ and all those other kind of platforms. We had like hacking scripts, and we did, was it like
Sub-7?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, funny story. So I never really wanted to get IT, but I was always super interested in like security or hacking things. There was no cyber security or information security back then really that I knew of anyway. The internet was around obviously, but there wasn't really so much information out there about this kind of stuff. It was always really underground. So I remember it was at the Anarchist cookbook. Remember Anarchist handbook or
yes.
something like that?
Yeah.
Yes, and my mum had this like laserjet printer. I printed it out, got some duct tape, made like a whole binder and all that kind of stuff like that on it. And it was just like how to do just stupid things with, whatever. So, and hacking was in there as well.
Yep.
And like how do you do stuff? So a little bit of how do you learn Unix? I'm like, what's Unix? Went to the local library. Surprisingly, they had a Unix book that was about this thick. I'm like, I guess I need to learn Unix. And I was just like reading it. I'm like, I have no idea what any of this stuff means. And then back in the day, there was a Happy Hackers handbook. Remember that?
I remember that one too.
They're like, oh, what you need, I forget what they call it. It was essentially like a shell box or a shell. I'm like, how do I get a shell? And he's like, go on
What is a
IRC.
shell?
What is a shell?
How do I
Like,
get one?
Yeah, well, right, because it's like brand new. What is a shell? How do you get a
find
shell?
it?
And jump on IRC. Like, oh, usually you just ask your internet service provider or ISP. So I'm like, oh, hey, Telstra, can I have a shell?
Red or green?
From some like 13, 14-year-old kid, right? They're like, no.
No, you can't.
And you are now on a list.
We're blocking Teldet.
But it's just like just doing stupid stuff. But on the Sub-7 thing, we had an IT program, like IT subject at high school, and we were doing Delphi, like Borland Delphi. And I'm like, I don't like that. I'm going to do VB6 because a friend of a friend was a programmer and he did VB6. So he gave me all his old VB3 books and he's like, oh, it's near enough. You can learn VB6 with it. So there was a thing called WinSock, if I'm remembering that right. And you could essentially create a client-server application and you could send remote commands to it. And the thing with Sub-7 was always like, hey, do you want a beverage holder? And you push the button and the little CD-ROM
drive
came,
opened up.
which had a hole in it. So, so I'm like, oh, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. I want to do that. And so don't do this at home, kids. But I installed that at school sort of thing, right? I got in trouble and, teachers found out, the head of department sort of thing found out. And as I was joining the Air Force, it didn't work out because I went through all the tests and went through the psych, the med and all that kind of thing, passed everything, but it was like they just didn't get back to me for 6 months.
Wow.
I'm like, oh, okay. And my mum, she got in my head and she's like, oh, just apply for TAFE. Do something, whatever, it doesn't matter, just do something. I'm like, all right, cool. So I'll keep busy, I'll apply to TAFE. I did a diploma of network engineering at TAFE. And as I was going through TAFE, I'm like, oh, this IT thing's pretty cool, but I still want to keep it as a hobby because I don't want to resent what I do, sort of thing. In my mind back then, like if you do what your hobby is, you're not going to really enjoy it. Because I was super passionate about it. I still am. Now it's more PowerPoints and spreadsheets, but and spreadsheet, like about spreadsheets, right?
Okay, I'm told I'm a PowerPoint and PDF guy these days. I'm not even in cyber, so love a good spreadsheet.
Yeah, you are more of a PowerPoint guy.
Stop
so
it!
you make a good PowerPoint presentation.
We've got him
I've seen
telling
enough
me
of
that now.
I mean, I can say that because I am too, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's where you get to when you're a C level.
So I was in Queensland, you know, hence the 4X beer and all that stuff. I should have brought some 4X.
You should have bought some 4X,
I
but
was
you're,
about
on,
to.
but you're on the wagon. So.
Yeah, that's right. So
I'm not the one knocking you off the wagon, mate.
So so I was in Queensland. I'm like, oh, actually, I might just join the police force, sort of thing. So I went through I didn't actually apply. I was like going through the process and what you need to do and all that kind of thing. And they said on their website back then, I don't know, it's probably changed now. They said you need to be over 25 years of age, or you need to have a tertiary education and show volunteering in the community.
Right.
I'm like, well, that makes sense, right? It's like, you know, you wouldn't give a 18-year-old a gun and all that kind of stuff like that and just send them out in the wild sort of stuff, right? So I'm like, yeah, that's fair. So I'm like, well, I'll do the TAFE thing. After TAFE, I'll apply for the police force and yada, yada, yada. I was going through TAFE and then again, my mum got in my head and she's like, just apply for university. See what happens. If you get in, at least it's an option that
Mum's
you have.
just guide you in the direction she wants you to
Yeah,
go.
and I owe a
What a
lot to my
legend.
mum, to be honest. And the AWSN thing has a lot to do with her as well. But yeah, so she's like, just apply, see how you go and all that kind of thing. I'm like, all right, I'll do it. So I applied, I got in, and as I was going through, you kind of had to, like, to join a police force, you had to show volunteering in the community. So I went back to my old high school. The head of the department and I, he knew me, he knew who I was.
Of course he knew who. You're the kid who
In a
opened all
good
the
way,
CD-ROM
or-
drives on all the computers.
Get
at
to
the
install
same time.
malware throughout the entire IT network.
That's actually one of my interview questions these days for our engineers.
Really?
Did you ever nmap your high school?
Oh, and do they admit or?
Our current, we've just brought in an IT admin trainee, our first internal IT person, and he's such a shy guy, and shout out to him, he's fantastic. And he said, oh, I didn't because I was too scared, but I did this little bit of stuff over here. And I'm like, you're hired.
Yeah, it was 'cause it has that sense of curiosity as well, right? But it's
Yeah.
like, it's a double-edged sword. If they say, oh yeah, I owned everything and did all these things,
I
and
don't
changed
want
my
that
grades and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, oh, I
Gotta have a
don't
healthy
really
balance.
know.
Healthy balance.
There's a line. sort
If
of
you've
thing.
nmapped something or you're you're opening cup holders for everyone, different story.
Yeah, well, and back then it was more frowned
Oh,
upon.
it was
So
just-
it was different time.
Hacking was back in the day. It was just to see what you could do. It wasn't for nefarious purposes.
Yeah, well, there's no such thing. Oh, I'm probably going to get added, but I don't think there was a such thing as ransomware back then, sort of stuff, right? So maybe there was, maybe I don't know.
I'm trying to think. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, there was the origins of ransomware, I believe, coming through the 90s, but I bet the first case might have even been earlier than that, where they mailed it out on a floppy disk. I think that's what they say the first case of ransomware was. A guy wrote some code that would encrypt, not really encrypt, but, you know, mess up with some files.
Yeah,
He
but was
mailed it out to people as a piece of software, and then once it messed up some files, it asked for some money to be mailed back to him. My understanding
So
is...
that's proper ransomware.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, via mail, post order.
Mail order malware.
I don't think he made
Put his
any money
house as
from
like
it,
a
and he was
reply to
definitely
address.
caught. So
Oh, yeah. So you went that road. You went back to the IT admin.
Yeah, and I'm like, hey, I need to show volunteering in the community. I like computers. I'm actually okay with them. For the next 6 months while I finish off my TAFE, do you mind if I volunteer once a day? And he's like, yeah, sure. We need some help. You know, those computers need to move there and those ones need to move over there, sort of thing. This one needs to get reinstalled. So just general IT stuff. And he and I got along really well. Next thing I know, I got in at uni. I'm like, actually, I don't mind this IT thing after I got like a feel for it, like doing it, professionally, sort of thing. And he goes, you know what? What you can do is work for me as like a teacher aide doing IT, and I'll give you a full-time salary if you promise you finish your degree.
No way.
And you don't have to work full-time. Just do weekends, do out of hours, like work around your uni schedule, because there's nothing more important than you actually studying. And just make up the time during the school holidays, work 7 days, 10 days, whatever you feel comfortable with. So I was like, I was at uni with a full-time salary like no one else was, right?
Yeah. So you're buying all the jugs at the pub. Surely. Surely.
So it was fantastic, right? And like, shout out to him, mate. Like, honestly, he was probably one of the best bosses I've ever had in my life, because he was just like, I see where you're going, I see what you want to do, and then go for it.
Do you see him as one of your first ever mentors then?
Probably, yeah. Like, I didn't even know the concept of a mentor back then. So I would 100%.
Can you look back on your career and honestly say you've had people that have been mentors, and you might not know at the time, but you look back and go, wow, you've guided and shaped me into the direction I am now?
100%.
And how many do you think you've got true mentors?
Including him, Bob. Over the time, probably about 6 or 7.
Wow, that's...
really, what I would consider real. Aside from the, hey, do you have time for a coffee?
Oh,
a quick
no,
chat
I'm
sort of
talking
stuff, but,
someone who,
It's got to be deeper.
What
Yeah.
about you, Jack?
Immediately 2 come to mind, and then the thought process goes, I worry that I've forgotten about someone or missed someone. And so I'm going to then estimate at the 3 mark just in case to cover that person I might have forgotten.
And did you approach them, have you, labelled it, when you're in high school, it's like, will you be my girlfriend? Yes, no. Have you done the, will you be my mentor? Yes, no.
I've been down both paths, right? Having come through cadetship, graduate type programs, throughout those programs, you get a labelled mentor, right? And I have to say, in those cases, they don't make the cut. They're not on the list, right? My true mentors have not been ones who have been intentionally labelled that way. It's just relationships that you've built over time, whether it be a previous colleague or manager or someone you've met through the community. Maybe there has to be an element of, not just this person is guiding you in your career, but you really get along with them on a personal level, right? So they become almost a friend as well as a mentor, and that's how they make that category for me.
Look,
How about you?
I've got 4.
4.
Yeah.
You have, as in you currently
No,
have?
in my career, I've had 4.
Yeah, wow.
And to the point exactly to what you were just saying about friendship, one of them came to my wedding. So he flew across from Perth. Shout out to Steve Simpson. He came across from Perth for my wedding, spent the night. Absolute legend of a human. Again, it's the same thing. I didn't go up to him. He was my boss. He was my first boss when I was in consulting, and I'd still class him as a friend. He's that person I could not see for a few years, but then still just be like, hey, how you going? And this, it's that person who can see something in you and they believe in you, and they support you and they guide you through, and they see something you don't. And I think that's something we all need to find, and we're talking about how we've gone on the journey. Sometimes you're sitting there doubting yourself, but then there's that person who just comes and gives you a little bit of a shove, and you're
100%.
like,
Especially in
maybe
early
I do know what I'm
days.
doing.
It's just encouragement.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just saying early days, it was just encouragement. That's all it needed. You were young into the career, unsure of the right steps to take or what steps might even be available to you. So if you ask them, should I do this, should I do that? And it could just be yeah, it sounds like a great idea. Just do it, right? And that's all you need. Just a bit of confirmation to take a risk, go down a path. And that's where it starts, I think.
Yeah, but also to keep you honest and challenge you as well, right?
True.
And also tell you, it's like, mate, you in that situation, you might talk them through saying, I'm in this situation, am I reading this wrong? Am I doing something wrong? And just for them to be in a position where there's that level of trust, you say, you know what, yeah, you are. You're kind of being a jerk right now.
Well, you had that going from consulting into corporate world, right? Had you been in a full-time gig really before you went into Seek? So, because you're at Context for how long?
Yeah, so off and on at Context in total times, I kind of had a bit of a break from it to go somewhere else for a bit.
So you went inside a couple of times?
No, consulting. I was consulting for 8 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you had those conversations, right, with a lot of people and probably some of those mentors to go, I finished up at Context. These are the things I've got on the table. What's the right journey? What's the right step?
Yeah, so I was heading up Context, and this is they got eventually acquired, and kind of
There's a reason why they're a fantastic team that you built there, mate.
Oh, it's an amazing team.
I still look and go, that's the idol. That's the top rung.
Thanks, man. And shout out to the team as well, because we're still mates. We're still.
Yeah, we got a couple of them.
We know a few of them very well.
I want members of that team once they got acquired.
Yeah, and we always talk about catching up and doing barbecues and all that kind of stuff like that. Rock solid team. I remember because I was heading up the team, and it got to a point where I'm like, okay, you naturally start thinking hey, what's next, right? Or sometimes you'll be super happy. And I remember, just to rewind back, when I joined NAB, I finally became an officially a pen tester. Yeah. Moved laterally within NAB, and I'm finally I'm a pen tester. After a couple of years, one of the senior managers came in and said, oh, what's your development plan? I'm like, you know what? This is the job I've always wanted to do. I cannot see me doing anything else. I love hacking stuff. This is, since I was 13 sort of stuff, right? Making silly malware sort of thing. So
when there were zero consequences.
yeah, well, but then so I reached that point. I'm like, well, I can either start my own consultancy because I build the team, I know how to do it, customer base and all that kind of thing, or I could go down this head of security, CISO, kind of route as well. So I reached out to every single CISO I knew at the time, and I just said, hey, listen, can I buy your coffee? And like, you can do so many things, literally just buying someone a coffee, having a chat.
Absolutely.
And I just said to them, give me a no BS, a day in the life of what do you experience, what's it like, pros, cons, warts and all assessment of what it's like actually to be a CISO. And I got some varying responses from like, I'm burning out, this is the worst job in the world kind of thing, all the way through to this is absolutely amazing because I'm in charge of the direction of cybersecurity within this business. I'm in charge of building out a team around me sort of thing and building them up to the career aspirations they want as well. So it's like everyone, just like with any job, like everyone's happy, sad, and everything between, right? So I reached out. I also had a coffee with my current boss. And I was like, hey, I'll buy your coffee, 30 minutes. I just want to kind of have that chat. It ended up being like a 2.5 hour conversation.
You knew him already?
I knew sort of him. Like we met a couple of times. They're like, those like at a conference and always people go before the conference to a bar or something like that. So I met him through a guy named Julian Burton, like awesome pen tester.
Yeah.
I think he's in the US now or something like that. I think he's in Brisbane. Anyway, doesn't matter.
But it was an email intro. It was a LinkedIn message. What
it was a intro through Julian to say, hey, let's have a chat sort of thing.
And then how'd you meet Julian?
So Julian Burton and I, we not at all IT.
Yeah.
So I used to be in the Melbourne Uni Mountaineering Club.
Yep.
Like rock climbing, hiking, climbing mountains, all that kind of random stuff, right? And he was a really good rock climber there. I'm like, I'm aspiring to be like that guy because like he's really good. And we just kind of met through there, got along, went on a few kind of like rock climbing trips and hiking trips and all that kind of thing. And just kind of met him through it. And then I kind of introduced him a little bit to cybersecurity. I think he was an engineer or like a software dev, and he's like started dabbling in cybersecurity and then kind of went into it a little bit more. So but he went like fully into AppSec. He used to run AppSec Day.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
So you steered him towards cyber?
I think so. I can't quite remember. Well, maybe he knew of cyber because I was in cyber and I maybe mentioned a couple of times.
And then you say friends?
Just take credit.
Just agree.
Not swap.
Take the credit.
Well, just in case he's watching, he's like, dude, that didn't happen at all. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but then he can call you out in private. So then you finish up a context, and then you're like, hey, Julian, can you put me in touch with the what's his role at Seek?
CISO.
Your boss? The CISO. The CISO at Seek. That's basically how it happened?
Yeah, have a conversation, and he turned around and he goes, listen, there's an opportunity here. We have a role for head of corporate security. And he goes, this is the role, this is the remit, this is all the things you need to do. We have so many projects, you can just kind of pick and choose, grab a project from the catalog, the stuff that we need to do. Just like any business, right? There's like always a backlog of stuff. And he goes, in the background, what I'll do, I'll coach you to go through to like become a CISO or a head of security. And when it comes time for you to be in that position, it's your choice what your next steps are. And almost like a bit of a succession plan kind of thing, right? So
it was through knowing someone, right? And it was through networking, through going to events, through being part of a community, it wasn't through applying on a job board, which I'm not bashing Seek whatsoever. It's a fantastic tool. It's wonderful. Job boards have their place, but it was very much through being in the community, being in a network, getting out and meeting people.
Yeah, and cybersecurity is so, I wouldn't say weird, but just lack of a better word, like strange or weird like
it's
that.
It's the weirdest industry, honestly. It's for recruiting.
Yeah, you can say it. I think it's very different to so many other industries when it comes to recruiting, right? It's a major topic we wanted to touch on today, which is the influence of this network and the mentors and the contacts that you've had in the industry on your career path. I think the same goes for all of us, right?
How did you become a pen tester?
Well, I started working for you, which was my first true pen tester role. I'd done bits and pieces before that.
This is a funny story, actually.
Well, it was simply because I knew you through a friend, right? You were doing more pen testing when Triskele Labs was beginning, and you had too much to handle. You needed some extra work done, so you reached out to ask if anyone was willing to do it after hours on a contract basis, and that word reached me. And so I did that for a while, and eventually you offered me a job. And I said, that sounds great.
I believe I tried about 5 times to get you on full time.
Took a bit of convincing. But then, you make those decisions by reaching out to your network and to talking to a few people to see what they think of the decision and the situation. And that's why I made it, right? A few positive comments about yourself from various people in the industry.
Thank you to whoever has said that.
Well, those bribes worked.
I know, right?
Yeah, apparently.
$500 in your back pocket.
He knew where to put the money, yeah. He's always business smart.
But then, right, I've seen the potential in you the whole time you've been with TL, and that's why you've gone. And I'm still super proud of this. We've done it with a number of the team. You went from pen tester to senior pen tester to team lead, and then I was telling a story just yesterday, and then I tried for about 18 months to get you to take the CTO role, and I tried, and you said to me, I'm happy in pen testing, right? I'm happy. Then the next time was, yeah, I can see me doing something else. And then the next time was, I'm not quite sure I know enough about the defensive side and the IR side. He said, give me a bit of time to start working if I can learn that side of things. And then the final time, you finally went, if you'll just stop asking me, I'll do it.
Yeah, probably 2 major factors going on there in that decision. The first one being probably something that so many people in cyber experience, right? Imposter syndrome. Just thinking, am I really ready for that? Can I do that? Do I have enough experience, ability to tackle those challenges, right? Doubting yourself, basically. Goes back to what I said about having someone being able to say, yes, you can do this, or give you positive affirmation. The other side of it was indeed the blue team side, right? I'd been so heavily red for a while that I wasn't sure if I would be able to cover that, even having done blue, in the past 4 or 5 years ago at that point. But I think overall, looking back on it now, it was definitely a good decision because being thrown into such an uncomfortable situation, I thrived and learned so much as a result, and I'm still learning so much at a rate much faster than if I had stayed put. And B, it's just been interesting, right? We've been doing so much interesting stuff on the blue team side, from a digital forensics perspective, from a SOC perspective, from an engineering perspective, new challenges. So I certainly don't regret the decision.
Yeah, and the imposter syndrome thing is just, it's so hard to deal with. It's so, right? Everyone gets it. And
Absolutely.
One of the other things in my spare time.
You've got that?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Hang on. So AWSN, TuskCon, B-sides, work, family life.
Yep. My uni YouTube channel, which we'll get to in a sec.
We will get.
Can we plug it now?
Yeah, well, I got whole 25 subscribers, so Richmond Woodworks.
Richmond
Woodworks. You've seen it here first. Jump on, right?
Mate, you'll have 26 after this.
I hope 27.
27.
Maybe 28 as well.
Mate, I think this channel has about 100 subscribers, so
there we go.
It takes its time. But we are launching on Spotify and the Apple podcast in the next week, so keep an eye out for that.
I will like and subscribe, and I'll hit that notification
Smash
bell.
that like button.
So the other thing I really, really enjoy doing is mentoring. I'm super into it because, like, back on that conversation we were just having before, like you said, how many mentors have you had in your career? And like my first one that said, hey, I will invest in you. This is something that's good for your education and career. And ultimately, what I didn't get to was ultimately I moved my first professional role at IBM to move to Sydney. And I went to him, I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? He's like, do it. Yep. Absolutely do it. This IBM may not be the end goal, but you're stepping through the door to a very, very large world. And I'm so thankful.
Instead of being, did you feel in Brisbane you were a big fish in a small pond? And then you moved to Sydney and all of a sudden you become a small fish in a very big pond?
Yeah, well, that one, I was at uni, went straight to IBM.
Okay, so you hadn't
But
built
when I
your
went back
profile
to
in
Brisbane, Brisbane is hard. And just because the higher you get up, there aren't that many
Yep.
head companies, right? Of like the headquartered companies,
Same in Perth.
right? And same as Perth.
Same as Canberra.
True.
So it's really difficult. Like, what's your next move, lateral or up, or sort of thing? You have to wait for someone to retire, almost, right? So, but yeah. So on the mentoring thing, I'm super passionate about it. So I was chatting to a person this week because what I do in my little bit of spare time that I have is I mentor Black Hat US and Asia presenters. Right, how to present, how to kind of get your message across, how to structure your slides, how to hook the audience, kind of stuff. And I get so much from it. Like every single year, chatting to like some of the best researchers in the world, and they're asking you, saying, "What do you think about this?" I'm like, "Holy moly! Like, what are you asking me for?" Like,
because the research is great, but it's the common thing that we've all seen in pen testing, right? Is everyone, well, for a long time, everyone wanted to be a pen tester. Now everyone wants to be an instant response. We see it's flipped. But you have to convey what you found during a pen test into a report.
Yeah.
And that gets, I normally say, excuse me, 50% of pen testing is reporting. I'm not sure if either of you disagree with that rough stat, but it's the same thing for a researcher. You've done the technical side of things and you found a cool thing. Now, how do I convey this to an audience that probably doesn't understand 99% of what I'm saying?
yeah, because that person's had months and if not years to learn something inside and out, come out with some research, like groundbreaking research, and then convey that in a 20, 30, 40-minute slot. And then some people, they don't have that same amount of time to like really dedicate to what that person's researching. Maybe there might be like a dozen at max in the audience that know the same level that person knows about that specific type of vulnerability or specific type of entry point or like whatever they're researching, right? So, and I was saying to this guy, because it's like, oh, I'm really nervous. I'm like, mate, I've lost count how many times, podcasts and, whatever else sort of stuff, right? Every single time I'm in front of a camera, like right now, I'm nervous, super nervous.
Are you really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Not right now, because I'm
No.
like, we're in the flow of things, but before I'll pace, I'll go, I'm like, second guess myself, all those things. Everyone does it.
Yeah, right.
Do you? Do you guys go through the same thing?
Not for Cybeers, right?
Okay.
Because this is a thing that Jack and I created this purely because during COVID, we wanted to get out and talk to customers like we normally do. So it's like, okay, what are we going to do? It's literally just a couple of cybersecurity experts sitting down, having a beer and talking. So I've forgotten the cameras are here every time we record, and it's just people having a chat. So this one, no. Anything else, 100%. When I had to record, I had to record two things in very, very quick succession recently. I had to do my ECU Hall of Fame acceptance speech because that was remote. And I had to do the relaunch of TL branding when we changed all of our brand. I took about 2 hours to record both of those because I was nervous as heck. I can sit down and talk to a board of directors about a topic I know, but if it's something I need to convey, no, nervous.
Yeah, I think I've become pretty comfortable with Cybeers at this point, but it's just because of repetition, right? Certainly in front of a crowd,
Live crowds are different, yeah.
Despite having repetition in that context, you still feel the nerves every time.
I've seen you present, right? You've done absolutely well.
Thank you, I appreciate that. But behind the microphone, it's so hard to know if that's what's being,
Message.
conveyed to the audience.
It's so hard, right? Because you don't know. Like, and in my mind, and this is what I was trying to say to this guy as well, it's like 99% of the people in the audience probably don't even know what you're talking about.
Yep.
Right? But you're taking them on that journey to learn, and that's what you're there for. There might be that 1%, and everyone zeroes in on that 1% that like, they're going to call me out. There's this, there's that, all the other things. And it's that 1% that's that super potentially loud in your head kind of thing that niggles at you, right?
And I said this to someone the other day. I went to a conference and there was 1,000 people there, and the MC, a friend of mine, and I say, that was really well done. He goes, oh, I was so nervous. Did I do right? And anyone could have done that. And I said to him, yeah, but anyone could have, but you're the one who did. You're the one who just went, yeah, I'm going to get up and do this. And that's probably a key takeaway I'd like to put to people out of this is put yourself out of your comfort zone.
Absolutely.
Cybersecurity at the moment, we moved, all three of us were pretty fortunate we got into it when we did, right? We got in 2004, for me, was when I did my undergrad, and it was still a niche industry. It was small. You could reach out to people like you did to say, hey, let's have a coffee. You've been fortunate to do that recently through a mutual connection. But we were all so fortunate. It was as the industry was developing and it was growing. So we got in at a time where it was fairly simple to do that. Now, to go from pen tester to CTO in 6 years, that's tough to do because we're in a different environment now. We're in a world where the government came out and said, we need a bunch of cyber professionals, and the average class size for a master's now is 800 people.
Really?
Yeah, 800 in an average lecture. So you need to put yourself out there. Get out of your comfort zone. Present at conference. Seems something like B-Sides. How many people go to B-Sides Melbourne now?
About 550.
All right, so you got 550. Even, okay, you've got the regular ones, Ruxmon.
Well, you got Ruxmon. I think there's about 30, 40 people every month.
Right.
Pretty
so
consistent.
30, 40 people, topic, everyone's there just to support each other. Get into the community. Cyber is still a tight-knit community if you know where to look.
And accepting.
Very
And
accepting.
super open, like come on in sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, like arms wide open. If you're willing to give even a little back to the community, we'll give even more back.
Yeah.
I said to someone the other day, unfortunately one of our team members left, he wanted to go internal. I said to him, remember now you're going to see one environment instead of 100, and you're just now going to get focused on that little thing. But I said, do remember to keep going to your events. He's never been to events because he had those 100 environments he could touch and he had all this knowledge. Now he's got one. I said, make sure you go to the events because you can't just get stuck there learning that one thing. You need to draw on all this knowledge and develop a profile. That's what I said to you years ago.
Yeah.
Develop your own stock.
Absolutely. That's probably the big takeaway, right? The importance of networking, mentoring, anything of a social nature within the wider community here, I think is just key to developing your career and has influenced all our careers over the years as well, right? In such a big way.
Yeah, well, yeah. So definitely get a mentor, but also if you're in a position where you can help someone else, absolutely do it as well. Like give back.
Give back.
Yeah, sort of thing. Was it pay it forward sort of stuff,
Pay it
right?
forward.
Yeah.
When I got to Melbourne, that's why I asked you about the small fish in a big pond. That's what Steve said to me when I moved over. So moved over to Melbourne, didn't have a job, no house, no job, no car, no friends, nothing.
That's brave.
Just packed everything up, jumped on a plane, and that was 2012 when cyber wasn't really a thing. I was at Bank West, and the head of security tried to get me into CBA because that's when Bank West was first being acquired by CBA, and she got so very close, but then they shut it off at the time. I didn't get a job for 3 months because cyber wasn't a thing. Now, I went to everything. I went to last Friday of the month. I went to all of the ASA events. I joined the local board of ASA, the local Melbourne committee or the Victoria committee. I went to all the Ruxmons. I went to RuxCon when it was still a thing because I just went, how am I going to get a job? And I went, right, it's all about the community. It was in Perth, must be the same in Melbourne. And I'd been over here a day and a half once before I moved over. But I just went to everything. And that's how I still have some of my closest connections and people that I'm at a conference. And I'm like, hey, how you doing? How did we meet each other? Oh, last Friday of the month, drinks, that's right. So it's the cyber community is still about getting out there and putting yourself in situations you might not be comfortable with, but putting yourself in that scenario.
Yeah, and
So important.
and it's just and it's ever changing as well. It's such an expanding kind of industry, and so there was always something new to learn. And the thing I really love, it's so humbling as well as an industry. It's like the moment you think you know something, you don't.
Oh, you realise you don't know anything.
Oh, yeah.
If you think you're an expert, you're really not.
Always more to learn. Always more to learn. Well,
we've been chatting about this for quite a while. This is old friends catching up over a beer, and that was the whole pretext. But do you have any And the Club Mate, of course, Galen Club Mates. Even if we didn't think to bring a bottle opener, that's fine.
I'll drink it on the way home.
Enjoy it on the way home. Have you got, outside of that, any key takeaways that you've got to leave the watchers and the listeners with? Any
Messages,
key piece
insight,
of wisdom that you can impart?
Yeah, there was one thing I did want to kind of talk through as well. So just recently, one of the things I realized when going into, because you talked about going from consulting to internal sort of thing. And as a consultant, you see so many problems all around the place. And you're in there to fix everything. Like you're the fixer. You kind of you show them how to do things because you're the expert they brought in. When you go into any kind of internal role, always be mindful that there's been a journey there already. Right? Don't go in like full steam ahead like a bulldozer and just say, well, everything you've done in the past is, we're going to throw that out because I'm here now to save the day. And one of my team members or one of my colleagues called that out quite early when I joined Seek, and he's like, mate, here's the lay of the land. What you're saying, it can be quite hurtful, or it can be. This is how it's been taken. I'm like, holy moly, that's not the intention. I'm just trying to help here. And he's like, yeah, just first understand, and then seek to be understood.
I love that. And that can be taken not just going from consultant to internal, but coming into any new role, right?
Any change.
There's things people are quite, they're close to their hearts. And especially if you're the first person to come in to someone's developed something in their spare time and then handed that over to someone that's like doing it full time and that's their career, that's their focus. It can be hard to hear it. They hear you. They know. But don't just go in, like you say, like a bulldozer and just be like, what you've done is terrible. We're going to take it and rip it up and move on. I think that's probably key wisdom for any role, not just going into the internal world. How about you, Jack, from this last 45-minute discussion? And I say we could go for another 3 hours. I can feel a part 2. Any key pieces of wisdom?
We could, but no, I probably don't have anything else to add. I think we've covered a lot of good ground, right? I think the importance of networking. We've covered very much the paths that some people take to move between different roles, why they make those decisions, and what to keep in mind when you make those movements as well, right? I think perhaps everyone takes a different path in their careers. They make decisions for different reasons, but probably the advice I would give to anyone is what you gave, Nick, which is putting yourself in uncomfortable positions is where you learn most, get the most experience, and ultimately, even if it's quite difficult at first or throughout the journey, it's where you will feel the most rewarded, I think.
100%. Love that. Well, mate, thanks for coming down. Thanks for being our second ever guest.
Absolutely.
Very much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
To my soon-to-be open bottle.
Thanks, everyone. See you on the next one.
Cheers.